is short of water and could be continually. That's the sort of scheme that people around the world are looking at. So there are it's recycling. Sorry, I answered the question in the broad scientific sense that water is being recycled all the time, because it's, you know, there's however much hydrogen and oxygen there is, and it goes around that way. But the issue about whether or not water is reused on a local basis, one of the theoretical questions that you know, is worth a debate sometime, but it's not likely to happen in the UK, I have to say. Every drop of water that comes out of Northumbrian water is designed to be drinkable. Take that back slightly. There are people who take non-drinkable water as well. But for people who have taps at home, you know, we know that the average house, only a very small proportion of the water is drunk, but all the water that comes into the house is treated as if it were to be drunk. It has to be that way. But there's a huge cost in the doing of that. Now, if people were redesigning or designing for new countries, new systems, they might do a very different sort of system. But we've got the one we've got, and we've got an infrastructure which has done it that way.
Now, there's going to be more time for questions at the end, so can I ask people to save the rest of their questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll go on to Sarah Curtis, who is one of Durham University's staff in geography. I'll hand straight over to Sarah. Thank you. Oh, sorry, yes, we should close that.
Yes. It's very good to talk to you all today. I'm a health geographer, so I'm going to be giving you a perspective which is perhaps a bit different, and it's different also because I'm going to focus particularly on the mental health implications of water. Assuming that something's about to happen. So I think on your programme it says that I'm going to talk about ambivalent relationships between water and health. And I will be doing that, thinking about it particularly in terms of the mental health implications. So that might contrast a bit with some of what the other speakers are going to be saying. And I'm going to be talking to you about some ideas from a book that I'm about to publish, which takes a geographical view on health and talks about space, place and mental health, and argues that the physical, social and symbolic aspects of our environment are important for our health, as well as, for example, the medical care that we receive, and also that it's the way that individuals interact with their environment that makes those effects important and quite interesting to think about because they are quite complicated. I'm going to be skipping one or two slides to keep to time as well as I can. So I'm sorry if I seem to be jumping over one or two. But obviously from that perspective then, if we're thinking about the material, social and symbolic aspects of our environment that is important for our health, water is a key attribute in our environment. And in this way of thinking, it's important, for example, in a positive way, as part of a therapeutic landscape, one that's beneficial for both physical and mental health. So the idea of a therapeutic landscape is that there are some places which we think of as particularly conducive to physical, mental, spiritual and emotional and social healing, for example, and for good health generally, and that certain places achieve a healing sense of place because key elements of the environment are there which are good for our health. And water is seen as being part of that complex of physical, social and symbolic elements that are important for us. And a rather classic example of the sort of place that fits this healing place kind of category would be a place like Bath Spa, which has a very ancient, 8,000-year-old reputation as a place where the water is important for its healing properties, and has given rise in the past to the famous Roman baths, which provided a focus for the community in Roman Britain, and in the present day the spa has been renovated to this rather splendid new modern spa. And obviously there are elements about this place which value the water for its physical healing properties and the fact that it's nice warm water as well. But also, Bath Spa has always been a site for having a good time, for restoring your well-being from a psychological point of view, and mixing socially with people and supporting your mental as well as physical health. So why is water so important to us? May it also be important for psychological health as well as physical health, which is partly why we value places like spa towns. Well, there are several theoretical reasons why water might be psychologically important to us. And it partly from ideas put forward by authors like Fromm and Wilson, who proposed the notion of biophilia, as a fundamental, inherent human need to affiliate with other life and lifelike processes, but also they were attracted naturally to environments which would have been important during the process of human evolution, thinking right back to the savanna landscapes, for example, which is where the human race probably evolved. So typical human preferences then are deeply rooted in our DNA, it's argued, in terms of preferences for certain natural scenes, which include water as well as green space. So blue landscapes, including water, are important to us inherently. There are other things about landscape as well which link to successful evolution in terms of something which is legible, understandable, negotiable, and also offers something interesting, because of course humans have big brains and like to engage with an interesting situation. And there's also the argument that a place which is safe but also gives you a view out, the prospect of refuge idea, is very important. So we would expect waterscapes that have those features to be perhaps inherently attractive to us. From a perhaps more psychological perspective, attention restoration theory put forward by Kaplan suggests as well that there are elements of landscape which restore a healthy state of mind, especially if we're feeling tired and stressed. And natural landscapes, including blue landscapes with water in them, have soft fascination for us. They're interesting, but not so interesting that it's stressful. They have elements of interest that capture our attention, aesthetically attractive and peaceful. So this might be the kind of waterscape which would attract us. Nice big expanse of clear fresh water, there's a path, we can negotiate our way through it, there's a bit of mystery. If we could get to the end of that promontory we'd be able to see the whole water scene, so we're drawn into it. And it's interesting that this is actually an urban park in the middle of Montreal. It's not a completely natural water scene. So we can think about how water is being managed there in a way to create an attractive landscape for us. There are some problems with this idea that we have an innate attraction to certain water scenes. Probably we're not entirely determined in our behaviour and feelings by genetic predispositions, so sociobiology in a deterministic way is probably not helpful. People affiliate with things which are not natural. Urban landscapes are attractive too. And some people hate nature. And certainly all of us have probably been in natural settings where we wish we were somewhere else. So Kahn suggests that we do have to think about the social and cultural dimensions too, which mediate any natural relationship we might have with our landscape. And so our cultural frame of reference is important. And probably our individual and group sense of identity comes into play when we feel attracted to certain settings. Here's a place in Montpellier in the south of France. It's a modern urban landscape, and water features very highly here. It's a nice